Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we have a lot to get to on tonight's episode, including the new revelation that the Orioles did promote Mike Elias to president of baseball operations before the 2025 season. We'll talk about what that means for the Orioles going forward, and we're going to break down the group of prospects heading to the Arizona Fall League. But first, let's start with the news about Mike Elias, which was first reported by The Athletic on Thursday. The Orioles promoted Elias from general manager to president of baseball operations before the 2025 season in a move that went completely unannounced by Elias himself or the team. So if you thought that the Orioles operate in secrecy under Elias, well, they kind of took this news to the next level. We don't know a whole lot right now about what that means for the team going forward, but it does appear that there is already work taking place to perhaps reorganize or expand the front office a little bit, even up to the possibility of bringing in a potential general manager who would work under Elias as president of baseball operations. Now, I think it's worth pointing out at the beginning here that this structure is fairly common in baseball these days. And just because Elias is no longer technically the general manager, that doesn't mean that he's any less involved or any less shaping the vision for this organization than he was before. But obviously, with the Orioles at a bit of an inflection point going into this offseason, coming off of what has been a challenging year in a lot of ways, but finding themselves possibly in a good place with some of their younger players stepping up over the final weeks of the season, not to mention perhaps some flexibility to make the major league roster a little bit better. This was already going to be an interesting offseason, and now this news adds just another wrinkle to that. So, Nick, I'll start with you here. What are your thoughts on this move? I think this was something that you go back a year, we probably would have said was going to happen. But the fact that it went unannounced for who knows how long until The Athletic reported it last week was a little odd.
It fits the bill with this organization, right? I mean, if you need any more proof that whoever the beat writer is, if they're like Orioles rumors this offseason, before you share it, just remember that beat writer knows absolutely nothing, and that rumor means nothing, and there's no smoke whatsoever to make that rumor a possibility. It is definitely going to be interesting. Like, I don't particularly care about the front office side of sports. Again, Jerry Jones has ruined my football fanhood from literally my entire life. So I truly do not care about the front office, because if I worry about the front office, it's just going to make me even more miserable of a sports fan. But I mean, Elias is still going to be the guy making the final decisions, right? Or whatever. If it's still, if Eve Rosenbaum is still with the organization in some capacity, maybe she's the new GM. If it's, whatever role her, Sig, Elias, and whoever else is involved in the final decision making, I feel like that's not going to change too much. And just like we've seen with like the coaching stuff in the major league and the minor league levels, right? They bring in guys and women who are like the broad overarching, the final destination, they all align. But it's maybe how they get there might differ a little bit. And I feel like that's going to be the same thing with the GM. It's going to be someone who Elias knows, someone Elias has worked with, someone who has the same goals and thinks a lot like Elias probably, but maybe will disagree on how to get to that final goal. Ultimately, another voice in the room, which could be fun this offseason. But yeah, it's, without having any idea of how the front office is actually run, without having any idea of who could potentially take over the role, it will definitely at least make this offseason, gives us as fans something else to look forward to, and we'll see what kind of impact that has on the offseason. Because, it's not, as much as we want to believe it's just throw the most money at a guy and they'll sign. Like, that's not how free agency works. Maybe a new voice, new connections, new whatever can make this offseason as far as free agency goes a little bit more interesting as well.
Yeah, I love that it took 8 months or so for this to leak out. It's hilarious. And only probably because now they are actively looking to fill that role. I'm sure when it happened, it probably, I'm guessing, coincided with maybe Katie Griggs being like the president of the business side. So then maybe Elias got an extension, probably, and a promotion to the president of the baseball side. So line those things up. And then maybe, bad timing, end of the offseason. Everyone's kind of in place for the 2025 season. So just let it ride until, I guess, as we get down to the nitty gritty of the season and about to head into the off season, that's when they're actively looking, and that's when it leaks out. And it's just, like Nick said, if you hear rumors, it's only because they're no longer a consideration or the Orioles wanted it out there, and seemingly the Orioles don't want any information out there. So be careful with the rumors, especially with Bob Nightingale. Adley Rutschman will be traded this offseason. But I think it's great. I think it's great news. I think this is, I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that, but I think this is a very smart group that's in that front office. And this just means that they'll be in place even more. And I think, like Nick said, more voices in the room, different ways to get to where we want to go. I think that's a good thing. You always want to evolve your thinking. Clearly, 2025 didn't work out. A lot of it is just injuries and bad luck, but also maybe just there's other ways they could have gone about things, and they can adjust for the future. I'd love to see Eve Rosenblum get the general manager position, but I would think that would have already happened if she was the front runner at least. So we'll see what happens. I'm kind of expecting an outside person that is somehow connected to Elias Sig and their past working with the Cardinals or the Astros or what have you. So I think it's a good thing. I think the structure is in place, and this is just what happens. You got to give promotions and title changes and raises to a successful front office to keep them in house. So I think it means we will continue to have the same people for at least the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think one thing that is worth pointing out here is that the Orioles could possibly be looking to fill 2 pretty significant roles in the organization this offseason if they are going to go for a general manager under Mike Elias, which it seems that that's the direction they're going in. There's that opening. But then you also have what looks like it's going to be a managerial opening. I think Tony Manzolino has done a very admirable job under the circumstances, but I have to think that the Orioles are at least going to explore other options this offseason. I know we got a question about this from a listener when this report surfaced, which is, how is it going to affect the managerial search? Who's going to pick the manager now? I don't think it's going to have much of an effect on the managerial search at all, unless somehow the general manager position is filled first, and maybe that general manager being in place helps the Orioles form a connection with the candidate, and they get that person. That's really the only way I see it affecting the managerial search. I think that the Orioles have a pretty clear sense of what they want in a manager, and they probably already have names in mind to take over the role permanently. And Tony Manzolino could be in that mix of candidates. But if they are going to conduct a search this offseason, I think the GM is going to have some role, I'm sure, if the general manager is hired by then. But I don't expect it to radically change their course, whatever that is going to be.
No, I mean, Elias is still the head of the snake, the head of the baseball side of things. So everything's going to run through him, but it'll have a trusted person. It'll be interesting to see who takes, there's every couple of weeks interview with the media to just give the lowdown on the things going on, especially like spring training. Is it still going to be Elias? Is it going to be the new general manager? But the managerial search, I don't see it having much of a factor there. Like you said, I still think Skip Schumacher is probably the starred underlined at the top of their list. I mean, why else bring John Mabry in to form that connection? It might not happen. Maybe he'll stay with Texas. Maybe he'll pass on the job, but I would think he would be the favorite. No way can you bring Manzolino back. I mean, like you said, admiral job, stepping in, being an interim for a vast majority of the season. More success under him than with Hyde, obviously, to start the year. But I don't think he's a major league manager, at least not at this point in his career, and not on a team you're hoping to contend year in and year out with the young core. So, I don't know. There's going to be a lot going on this offseason between a general manager, a manager, coaching staff, offseason trades and signings. It's going to be an active winter for the Orioles, to say the least.
I kind of like just the fact that it I don't know. Maybe does this invoke more confidence into where the direction of the organization from like ownership as well? Maybe like Michael Elias is going to stay in place. Ownership backs Elias, and now I don't know, between that move, this news coming out, the Basayo extension, the way this team is ending the year, you're getting guys back healthy. That's adding to it as well. Like it's been a lot of positives here to close out the year. And like I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't want to get too excited is before the offseason even starts. But it does, I don't know. I feel like it's a little comforting almost. And I don't know if that's a weird way or anything. I don't even know if I can like put it into words exactly like how I find that comforting, but it does just feel like there's still just, I don't know, everyone's on the same path, everyone's on the same goal, everyone seems to back everybody. And like this isn't because somebody did something wrong. I don't think this is just strengthening the organization. And hopefully this offseason goes much better, is much more result that we see as far as like free agency is concerned, and maybe some ideal trades. We see more of that activity, no more 37-year-old starters that you try to bring in last minute to be your number 3 starter. Hopefully the injury variance goes better for the Orioles as well. That's a big thing as well. And we're seeing Beavers and Basayo come off the hot starts in the major league level, and we see more of these arms start to make their debuts next year. I don't know, it's all kind of comforting as the season starts to wind down a little bit.
Yeah, and as much as a lot of fans at least want to see Michael Elias on the hot seat, want to see him fight for his job by making these splash signings, I think it's a great thing actually to not have that, to not have someone who's just like feels the pressure to do something. I want to just keep the path going. I feel like they got to this point by following a certain path. And like I said earlier, you still evolve your approach. You make subtle changes or adjustments to your way of thinking. Obviously, a smart organization is going to evolve their thinking to try to stay ahead of the game. But I think it's great that it seems a little more established and firm, and some confidence shown to Michael Elias and company. And yeah, I mean, if it happens again, maybe it's a different story, but I think it's a good thing to have some strength going into the offseason rather than running around panicking.
Yeah, those are good points there. And there's a lot, as I said at the top, that we don't know yet, but we know now, at least, that the Orioles, what David Rubenstein and Cal Ripken have said about him this season from the ownership standpoint is not just lip service. They are fully bought in. So it is on Elias to try to improve off of this year and reassess anything that needs to be reassessed and maybe rethink some processes differently. But I think it's pretty telling that he's not on the hot seat. And we'll go now to a different topic, which is the Arizona Fall League, which is going to begin here in early October. And last week, we learned which Orioles prospects are going to be heading to Arizona. And they are outfielders Enrique Bradfield Jr. and Thomas Sosa, catcher Ethan Anderson, along with left-handed pitchers Andy Fabian, Luis De Leon, and Carson Dorsey, as well as right-handers Tanner Smith and Zach Fruit. And you can kind of put these players into buckets. A lot of them did miss some time this season with injury, so this is a chance for them to get some additional reps in. In the case of a guy like Anderson, he had a promising finish to what was kind of an up and down first full season of pro ball. He's now going to have a chance to go out to Arizona, presumably get more innings behind the plate, work with some different pitchers, and have a chance maybe to work with the bat a little bit more. And then, so we'll break down these players individually, but I do want to start with the two outfielders in Bradfield and Sosa. As I mentioned, Bradfield had a couple of IL stints this season. Sosa also missed a significant portion of the season because of an injury he had early on with Aberdeen, but both kind of rounding out the 2025 regular season in a positive way. Bradfield currently doing so in Norfolk, and as we're going to talk about a little bit later on this week, Sosa had a nice finish at Double-A. So, Bob, I'll start with you here. What are you looking to see out of these two guys in Arizona?
Well, first of all, this is by far the best group of Arizona Fall League players I feel like the Orioles have sent to the AFL. Just exciting. I don't, obviously no disrespect to the I'm trying to remember some of the relievers that have been sent in the past couple of years, but obviously they saw some upside with those guys. But like, this is a pretty stacked lineup of guys, and yeah, Sosa and Bradfield are exciting for two very different reasons. Bradfield is knocking on the door. He's in AAA now. After a slow start, I feel like he's been pretty good after the first couple of games at AAA. Showing what he can do. He's got 5 stolen bases, a double, a triple. He actually popped a home run out to center field, 103 off the bat. Yeah, I think it's just about getting reps for him against a decent quality opposition. Obviously, Arizona Fall League, I think what they say, it's like between a AAA and AA level. So yeah, it'd be nice to just get him some reps, and then hopefully he can come into spring training and try to win a job. Probably won't, but at least get some positive momentum going in for 2026. And Thomas Sosa, yeah, he missed a lot of time. When he did come back, he was kind of hit or miss. He would show flashes of that power that he's got in his bat. 6 home runs at high A, 2 in his first few games in double A. Like, we know what he's capable of. He's got to do some developing. And yeah, I think you got the high ceiling, low floor, boom or bust prospect going, and you got the high floor, low ceiling guy who is pretty close to the major leagues, and they're both exciting in their own ways.
Yeah, and you got to remember about the Arizona Fall League. I'm sure we'll talk about plenty as the Arizona Fall League begins. Yeah, it is super hitter friendly, very, very hitter friendly. The pitching quality typically isn't great. Teams aren't going to send. You see some studs down there that are going to get their work in, but typically you don't see a ton of like really great arms down there for many obvious reasons. So yeah, I mean, this is truly like a process over results type league, and luckily we get a lot of these ballparks are equipped with Statcast, so we'll get that information. It always seems like Orioles prospects very conveniently are never like playing for a team that plays our home games in a Statcast ballpark. Maybe that's just the slight conspiracy theory part of me that comes out every now and then that says the Orioles do a little nudge when you're assigning prospects to teams. But yeah, we'll still get at least some games, even if their home ballpark isn't. But yeah, with Bradfield, it's like you said, we've talked about it a lot recently as the year's wrapped up, how when he's been on the field, he's been pretty good. He still got the promotion to AAA. It wasn't a wash year. It was just frustrating with the injuries. And it's, I think the thing with him is like, we know the profile, we know how he could succeed in a certain role in the major leagues right now. We know next year, even if the bat doesn't take a big step forward, you know exactly what kind of role Bradfield could fill at the major leagues next year to help out this team. Like what are we looking for in the Arizona Fall League? Like, are you guys looking for bigger exit velo numbers? Like, is there anything specific we're looking out for with Enrique Bradfield Jr.? I think would be my question.
I think the exit velo numbers are something I want to see because we haven't really had a chance to see those publicly until the very end of the season. So, good EV, good exit velocity numbers, kind of maintaining what he does well at the plate, which is never striking out, drawing his fair share of walks. Yeah, anything, you just touched on it, Nick. It's a very hitter-friendly environment. So any stats really have to be taken with a grain of salt, good or bad. But if you see the data backing up good offensive numbers to say, okay, Bradfield was hitting a lot of line drives and fly balls, and he was hitting the ball pretty hard, that's something I think you can look at as a positive.
Yeah, that's true. And just looking at it made me want to look at his prospect savant page. And obviously very limited sample size in his time at AAA, but his average exit velo is 53rd percentile, 88.3 miles per hour, which is interesting because his max exit velocity is 14th percentile, 103.8, 50th is 19%, 90th exit velocity is 22 percentile. So he's hitting it hard consistently, but just not those big, obviously. And that's pretty much what I would expect, honestly.
Yeah. And with Sosa, it's just like he doesn't turn 21 until mid-January. So yeah, the quality of pitch in the Arizona Fall League isn't going to be super great, but it's going to be a lot older guys. He's going to be facing some AAA level arms, guys who are 3 years older than him. So I think that's going to be fun. I think it was Baseball America was catching up with some articles over there today, and I think they talked about how when he came back, the batted ball, like the bat to ball, maybe took a step back when he came back from his injury compared to the last year or two that had been on the rise. But so I guess that's something to look out for here in the Arizona fall. Like how much contact is he making? And it will be fun to get those exit velo numbers because we know they were eye popping when he was, a teenager coming up through the system. So I'm excited to see him. Kind of shocked a little bit that it was Sosa, just because he is one of the younger guys, but that promotion to Aberdeen, despite all that missed time and stats that really didn't pop off the page in Aberdeen when he was down there, to still get promoted to AA to close out the year, I think speaks volumes about how this organization views him. But yeah, it's telling, I think, as far as the bats go. Like, I mean, when you look at who's not chosen, for me, the really only guy who I was like, I think this is a lock, was Tavian Josenberger. So, which I think is telling about maybe how the organization views him potentially. But yeah, really good sign to see Thomas Sosa on this list going up there.
Let's stick with the position players now. And Nick, I'll start with you because you wrote up this whole group over at our Substack, OriolesandTheBirds.substack.com. What are your thoughts on Anderson Gilling? We've talked about him a lot recently, noted that his production at the plate for large stretches of the season at Aberdeen wasn't great, but he did kind of rally at the end. And in a really important developmental milestone for him, caught a full season. And as we've pointed out numerous times, although he was a catcher at Virginia, he was not a full-time catcher there because most of his collegiate career overlapped with Kyle Teal's time at Virginia. So Anderson still has a lot to learn behind the plate, and he's surely got his reps this year. And while the bat was underwhelming for large stretches of the season, he did rally a little bit at the end. So what are your thoughts on him getting this assignment, and what are you looking to get out of him in Arizona?
Another one that I was honestly surprised just because he was that first year guy. And I kind of thought, when I guessed at who would go, just throwing names out there, I said one of the Aberdeen catchers just seemed to make a lot of sense. You could showcase Yasmil Boucher, potentially send him out there to Arizona. If he's hitting the ball hard, imagine what he can do in that thin air out west and be like, hey, anybody want to potentially trade for this guy? Maybe one of the other catchers like your Ryan Staffords or Colin Tufts, guys who didn't have the greatest years. I just felt like with Ethan Anderson, it was like, all right, you probably did a lot of work behind the plate. It's your first year. You did enough to get promoted to AA. You did good. We'll give you a break, and then let's hit this next spring training. We'll come back. But now that he's here on the roster, like, I think it's honestly kind of awesome. And he's listed as a catcher. It will be interesting to see how much he catches. I pulled up the roster real quick. The other catchers are Alfredo Duno from the Reds. Haven't heard of him. And Ethan Salas from the Padres. So he'll probably be hurt or something. It'll just be Ethan Anderson behind the plate. But I hope he sees a lot of time behind the plate. Like, I like the fact that they're just pushing him. Like, I truly just think that bat is going to turn back around when he fully settles in. And maybe this will help as well. It's hit the reset, fresh Arizona air, light air. He's going to have that bat, I think, should play pretty well against the competition he's going to face. And he can continue to work behind the plate a little bit more. I'm going to pay attention to like the splits, first base, DH, catcher, defensive splits for him this fall.
Yeah, I like it a lot, especially if, as we were surmising, that he got off to a hot start, missed some time with an injury, then struggled mightily. Could have been injury related since he got hot like August and onward. I think it's great to let him continue that, keep it rolling. And especially if it was injury related and he's feeling better now. And yeah, I think it's going to be great preparation for 2026. I think he's a big time breakout option for me for 2026, starting in AA. And maybe this means that they see him as having an available or not relying on the bat as much. Maybe I haven't really checked out much of his catcher defense, to be honest with you, but maybe this either means that they want to get the reps for the bat because they don't think he's going to be more than a third catcher at the major league level, or it could mean they see the possibility that he could stick a catcher and take some of the pressure off the bat. I guess you could go either way. But I do love that he's going to be there. I think his bat should play pretty well. We talked about him last week, but I think he had a pretty decent week in AA to end the season as well. So, yeah, another great choice.
Let's go over the pitchers now because this is kind of an interesting group. You have a few guys that missed time with an injury this year, but then you also have some intriguing relief prospects in Fabian and Smith, who are both building off of pretty strong 2025 seasons. So, Nick, I'll go back to you here. You had full write-ups on all the players who are going to the AFL over at Substack. So, what are your thoughts on this group of hurlers?
First thing with the pitchers is it's pretty cool to see Jeremy Heilman, who was Aberdeen's pitching coach this year, is going to be joining this group. I thought that was pretty fun. It was his first year in the organization. So to send him out west with this group of arms, a lot of whom he'd worked with already this year is a good sign. But yeah, I don't know. Zach Fruit was a slam dunk, like Bradfield. That was big. He needs the innings. Like it'll be really good to look at the pitch data, and if you see him come out and he's throwing 1-2 inning stints, like it's not because the Orioles are starting that transition to a relief role. It's just because it's the Arizona Fall League. They're not going out there throwing 6-7 innings in these games. But it'll be good just to get him some more innings and see what the walk numbers look like, and we'll get better data. I think we haven't gotten Zach Fruit like pitch data in a while because of the levels he's been pitching at. So that'd be good to see. Luis De Leon was a little bit shocking to me just because, yeah, he missed a little bit of time at the start of the year there, but he still got to 87 innings, same as last year. But then again, if ideally next year you get him to 120, 130 plus innings next year, hopefully spend some time in AAA and earns a 40-man spot by the end of next offseason. That extra work in the Arizona Fall League to get him to around 100 or so innings this year will help him reach those goals. Carson Dorsey, I feel like we've talked about him a lot recently as well, but just, yeah, he started the year on the 60-day IL, but had a fantastic end to the year. Final 4 starts, 21 innings, a .84 ERA, almost a 34% strikeout rate, 7.8% walk rate. So he only got 42 innings this year. So it'll be fun to see him. And maybe we'll see, do those secondary offerings. Does the data truly sing, as Joe Doyle said in his pre-draft report with Dorsey? And I'm interested to see the fastball as well, to see what that data looks like on that. And then when you're talking about the relievers, I think this is where it gets the most interesting, to be honest. We know who Luis De Leon is. But Andy Fabian and Tanner Smith, like, been talking about Andy Fabian for a long time now. And it's really awesome to see the Orioles send him out there. Like, we know he can get up to 97, maybe a tick higher. I've only seen 97 this year when he was in Delmarva, but we're going to see what the full repertoire looks like for Andy Fabian. And then we can speak with more certainty. Like, is this a dude, which I think he is, a relief dude, but a dude nonetheless, or like, it's just really awesome to see Andy Fabian be the pick here. And Tanner Smith, I think, is kind of like the hidden gem among this group. Like, when he was traded to the Orioles, we knew he was 6'6". We knew he touched 98 with a good curveball. Like, that was the report on him. But he was 23 years old and he was in low A, and just seemed like, yeah, he's got a lot of traits the Orioles like in their arms. He went to Harvard. Like, he's got that connection there. But like, what about Tanner Smith really stood out? You've got the higher profile arms like Bateman and, even the bats like Cobb Hightower. You got Tyson Neighbors in that trade. It just seemed like Tanner Smith was just kind of like a throw-in, kind of the flyer arm. And now you got Baseball America naming him one of the 12 interesting prospects to watch in the Arizona Fall League right after rosters were announced because of a lot of his secondary offerings and that big-time fastball from a 6'6" frame. So, yeah, the bats are fun, but this group of arms is going to make watching these games pretty fun this fall.
Yeah, I'm actually getting a little excited about Tanner Smith. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they try to see if he can work as a starter next year in 2026, even though it is a little crowded already. But at the very worst, he's clearly got a super talented arm, the way the strikeout to walk ratio was since he came over to the Orioles. Luis De Leon, I think it's kind of similar to Ethan Anderson. I couldn't think of the name for a second on the pitching side, whereas it seemed like something clicked in August and he was just lights out from that point on. So why not carry that over to try to get that muscle memory going for whatever click. Don't stop too long before the offseason. Keep it going. Try to build on that. And like I said, get that muscle memory ingrained, and maybe could be the centerpiece in a big trade potentially if he goes and shoves. Obviously, a big part of the AFL is not only getting reps for guys, but also showcasing some guys for potential trades in the offseason. I do not want to trade Luis De Leon, but just putting it out there. Who else? Carson Dorsey. Yeah, we've talked about him a lot. He missed the innings. Clearly, I think he's got some pretty good potential, so it makes a ton of sense. Andy Fabian. Yeah, he's going to be facing the toughest competition he's faced in his career. Obviously, he's only pitched like 22 innings in low A, so a lot of these guys are going to be double A, borderline triple A talents. It'll be interesting to see how he performs out there, especially in that offensive environment. And Zach Fruit. Yeah, I think he will probably be transitioned to a bullpen role at some point next year. But yeah, I mean, he's just got to get those innings in. He had such a great 2024. The numbers are not pretty for 2025, but he's shown flashes again, and he was hurt for a lot of the season. So still like the upside there, especially if and when he does go to a relief role. I think his borderline 100 mile per hour fastball is going to play pretty well.
The Orioles prospects will be on the Peoria Javelinas, and they'll be joined by players from the Mariners, Padres, Reds, and Twins organization. We'll have a lot more about the Arizona Fall League as it unfolds. It begins in early October, so that'll be a good time for us to have some baseball with the Orioles season wrapping up then and the minor league season over as well. And with that, now we will head into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre or post-game beer. And when you're at the ballpark this year, be sure to check out the Beer Sam Hine home plate, where you can get one of Checker Spot's signature beers, the Bird is a Word. And I should mention this Sunday is the 3rd annual South Baltimore Brewery District hot dog race. Checker Spot will be there as Relish, joined by Wyco as ketchup and Pickett as mustard. The race will take place outside of Pickett Brewing Company, which is right near Checker Spot, at 11 a.m. this Sunday, September 21st. It should be a lot of fun. And now we'll go into our last call segment, which talks about a couple of pitchers that have returned from injury recently in the major leagues and are making a very good impact. What are our thoughts on the performances thus far of Kyle Braddis and Tyler Wells since they returned from the IL after having elbow surgery last year? Braddis, as long as he is healthy, should be penciled into the 2026 rotation. But what do we make of Wells, who the Orioles are using as a starter and is having success in that role? Is Wells going to be a starter next year, or do they look at moving him back to the bullpen? But we'll take on that question as well as looking at their performances overall. Bob, I'll start with you. Clearly, we've seen what a difference these two guys, especially Braddis, can be now that they are healthy again. It just is a shame that it's not happening in the middle of a playoff race.
Yeah, exactly. And Bradish he's done for the night tonight at the night of recording on Monday, September 15th. He won another 5 innings, gave up 1 run to the White Sox, 9 strikeouts. So he's got a 2.45 ERA on the season. He did walk 4. That's going to be the last thing that comes back after Tommy John is the command. So no problem there. He's looking like the ace that he was in 2023, and as long as he was healthy in 2024. So obviously excited to head into the offseason with him firmly entrenched at the top of the starting rotation for next season. And Tyler Wells, he looks really good. He looks just like he did before the injury. Pounds the strike zone. He's very aggressive, like very efficient starting pitcher. I would not be surprised if he remains penciled into that role over the offseason, and at least in spring training, he's going to get built up as a starter. I think we've learned now you can never have enough starting pitching depth at the major league level. So especially Kramer had a little elbow thing. Looks like he's only going to skip 1 start and he'll be back. Albert Suarez was just put on the IL. He's getting imaging done on his elbow. Tyler Wells, I mean, I think he could probably start 20 plus games next year for the Orioles. And I don't think that would be a terrible thing. I think he could also transition to a solid relief role as well. We saw that in his Rule 5 year. But yeah, I think 5 and dive, 6 and dive type of starting pitcher, maybe a more consistent Dean Kramer type production out of him would be nice to see. So yeah, happy to have them both healthy and look forward to what they do.
Yeah, I've been on the Tyler Wells should stick in the bullpen train for a while, and I'm not against him starting next year at all. It's just I'm just hesitant about it, just because like we saw him back in 2023, right? He had those 3 fantastic months, and then it was like after the All-Star break, it started to fall apart. They sent him back to the minor leagues for that reset, and he came back as a reliever, and it was only a small handful of outings, but he was very well. He pitched very well. So since then, he's now 2 years older. He's missed 2 years. He didn't pitch really in 2024 or 2025. So he's going to be, I think he just turned 31. So he'll be 31, I think, all of next season, like 90% of next season. It's just that's my only hesitation. It's like to go into 2026 relying on him to be one of your top 5 guys. Is he going to be able to hold up across that full season? Like, I hope he can. And of course, you can put a lot of work in this offseason in preparation for that. But yeah, that's the only real hesitation I have with Wells going into next year, is his ability to hold up for that workload next year.
Yeah. That's. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, just to make my stance clear, I'm penciling him in as like the 8th starter. Like, and if he needs to be, like, I think even if he has to be early on in the starting rotation before he fades out, gets worn down, let's move him to the bullpen before then anyway. But mostly just like, I'd still have Kramer ahead of him probably. I'd still have Povich and maybe Brandon Young ahead of him, depending on how the offseason goes, but in that mix.
Yeah, I agree that I would have Kramer ahead of him in the rotation. And I know that when Wells is on, it's probably more fun to watch than Dean Kramer, because Wells can overpower hitters in a way that Kramer doesn't necessarily do. But we haven't seen the track record that suggests that Wells can hold up as a starter over a whole season. Nick is right. In 2023, for most, if not all of the first half, you could have argued that Tyler Wells was the Orioles' best starter. But when it unraveled quickly. So he did come back later that year, pitch well of the bullpen. What I think is going to be interesting to see over the offseason is that we know both the bullpen and the rotation need some help. And with Felix Bautista out for probably most of next season, does that make it more tempting to decide, okay, we're going to go get 2 starters and we're going to bump Wells to the bullpen and he's going to be our 8th inning guy? Or do they look at what he's done to close out this season and say, let's pencil in Tyler Wells to start for 3 months, and if that's all we get out of him, we'll move him to the bullpen and we'll trade for a back-end starter at the deadline? It's going to be really interesting to see.
Or ideally, Trey Gibson's ready to come up, or Nestor Herman's ready to come up even. Yeah, I mean, I like that idea. That's where it just gets tricky, because yeah, you could say, we're going to put you in the bullpen next year. Let's prepare you for that. Let your stuff really fly for an inning, maybe 2 if we need a little bit of length out of you. But like, you don't want to go into next season, I think, like, you want to keep them stretched out, because you want that flexibility like Bob was talking about. You need a lot of starters. So this is where kind of that issue comes in of, how do you prepare him? But it is a lot easier, I feel like, to transition him to the bullpen instead of, it's going to be a lot harder. It's almost impossible to build him back up. If you need to, suddenly it's, late May, early June, and you're like, oh, we need a starter now. It's going to be a lot harder to build him back up. So yeah, go into it. Hey, you're going to compete for a starting job next year. And if he gets pushed out, he doesn't earn that job, you got a pretty good fallback option there for him. And you can bump, if you need to bump Povich out to AAA rotation or Brandon Young to AAA rotation, you can. And fantastic depth to have.
Well said. And that does it for this episode. We will be back later on this week to recap the Chesapeake Baysox season. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolsOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community. You can join to $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. We'll be releasing our October update in a couple of weeks, and it's worth noting that we're going to have content over there all off season. We're not going to slow things down just because the season comes to an end. So you're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to do our second to last affiliate recap here as the 2025 minor league season draws to a close. The Chesapeake Baysox wrapped up their slate over the weekend. The Roberto Mercado-led squad finished 59-77. And while there were some challenges this year, particularly with the lineup, the pitching staff flashed a lot of potential. We're going to break all of that down on tonight's episode. And I do want to start with the pitchers. And just to run off some numbers here, the Baysox had the third most strikeouts in the Eastern League with 1,269, behind only Binghamton, the Mets affiliate, and Portland, the Red Sox affiliate. They also had a respectable staff ERA of 3.69, which is better than the league average of 3.85, and several prospects had breakout seasons there, whether you want to look at Braxton Bragg, who unfortunately had his season cut short because of Tommy John surgery. Trey Gibson, right now, probably the front runner for pitcher of the year in the Orioles farm system, had his longest and most productive stretch in the minor leagues this year at AA. And that really only scratches the surface of the pitchers that stood out during their time with the Baysox this year. And Nick, I will start with you because this was an interesting group where you had some guys that we were counting on having big seasons either get hurt and miss a lot of time, whether it was somebody like Edgar Portes or Juan Nunez, who basically missed all of, if not most of this season with an injury, or Zach Fruit, who lost a significant amount of time because of injury. But yet the guys that were healthy did step up in a big way.
Yeah, I like Alex Pham. Even was another one. You're just like, what could have been if he would have stayed healthy all year? I think I want to start the conversation here with like Blake Money. We want to start there first. 68 AA innings, a 4.21 ERA, but that came with a 3.69 FIP and a 2.95 xFIP. Career high strikeout rates. Like this guy, as he's moved up the ladder, the strikeout rate and the swing and miss has increased. The contact rate has decreased as he's moved up each level. And he caps off the year with 7 shutout innings, 10 strikeouts, and 20 whiffs. Pretty masterful end to his year at the AA level. Guy throws a lot of strikes. He's been doing that since his college days at LSU. He pounds the strike zone. He eats innings for you, and he's been piling up the whiffs as well this year. Like, I was looking back to like, where would Blake Money? Where's he at in our top 15 now? Like somewhere in the 45 somewhere range. If you go back to a couple years ago, I'm pulling up this list now. Here's our midseason 2021 prospect list. We can go back that far. Where would Blake Money rank on this list? That starts with Adley, Grayson, DL Hall, Gunnar, Kauser, Westberg. Jesus Christ, this list is awesome. Heston Kjerstad, Kyle Bradish, Michael Baumann, Taryn Vavra, Connor Norby, Kobe Mayo, Yusniel Diaz, Jemiah Jones, and then Kevin Smith at 15. And behind him, you got like Zach Lowther, Drew Rom at 19 and 20. Like, would Blake Money be a top 15 prospect on that list? When you look at, he's throwing 95, he's getting the strikeouts that he is, and the results that he's putting up at the AA level at this point. Like, this is a really fantastic year there for Blake Money, and a year that I know I've had trouble. Where do I rank him on the top 50 list? What do I see his ceiling as? And I still don't know. Is his ceiling like an up and down back end starter, a good starting depth arm, or is there a little bit more there in the tank? Honestly, I still don't know, but kudos him for a fantastic year.
Yeah, what what a great way to put the exclamation mark on his season, because I feel like, especially at AA, like he was outperforming his ERA the entire time he was with Chesapeake, and then it was nice to see him throw 7 shutout with the 10Ks there. I think his ceiling might be a guy. Well, ceiling probably back of the rotation starter, but most realistic, like if he can add a tick or two out of the bullpen, 96, 97, with ripping that curveball off against guys, I think that would be pretty nasty. Yeah, Bowie's Chesapeake's rotation all year, pitching staff just phenomenal. Luis De Leon ends the year there. Michael Ferret ends the year there. Braxton Bragg is like Trey Gibson before Trey Gibson for this season before he got hurt. Even the guys who traded for Johan Watts Brown, Nestor Erman got almost 100 innings, 91 innings at AA this year with a 3.76 ERA. He looked really good and seemed like he got better as the year went on. Trey Sprite, Zach Fruit, Alex Pham, these guys kind of got forgotten about just because of injuries and coming back. Alex Pham, he's been kind of worked as a reliever the last couple weeks. It's very, very full in that. Same with Ryan Long. I think these guys could be really effective relievers in the next year or two, but yeah, not even getting to the actual relievers that are in the AA bullpen. It's just pure insanity. It was the year the pitcher all coalesced at AA at one point or another this season, just whether they started there, passed through there on their way to AAA, or finished the year there. It just was everything we've been talking about for the last couple of years.
Yeah, Nick, to go back to your question, I think that money probably would have been in the 15 to 17 range on that list. And I know it's easy in hindsight to say, like, well, look what happened with Kevin Smith. He didn't pan out. We know what happened with Zach Lowther and Drew Rom. But Money has good velocity, consistent strike thrower, has the stuff that could play in the bullpen, but also might develop a back-end starter's pitch mix. So there's a lot to dream on here. I have struggled at various points with where do I put him on the list, because that first full season last year at Delmarva, it's like this guy's just solid. He takes the ball when it's his turn to pitch in the rotation. He goes 5 innings. He'll rack up the strikeouts, not walk very many guys. He might have some starts where the extra base hits get away from him, but overall, he's just really solid. But that doesn't always translate to success at higher levels. In the case of him this season, though, it did. And it's worth pointing out that second full year of pro ball for Money, 23 years old, his 121 in the third innings ranked second in the Orioles minor leagues behind only Cameron Weston. So that's a really good number for him. Shows that he can handle the workload. As long as he stays healthy, I think the Orioles have something here.
Yeah, and that's not bad considering where he was drafted as well. Another good success story there. You mentioned Trace Bright too, like in his season, how he kind of got forgotten about. And yeah, he did because of the arms there. Trace Bright had 2 very distinct seasons though this year. And it was first half as a starter, second half as a reliever. Starter Trace Bright was it was the Trace Bright that we've been seeing for the last 2 years. 56 innings, a 5.4 ERA, just a 19% strikeout rate with a 16% walk rate. But as a reliever in the second half of the year, 30 innings, a 3.52 ERA, 26% strikeout rate, walk rate down to 13.5%, just a 209 average against. We've questioned for a while whether or not he could be more effective out of the bullpen. Fastball has good traits. We know he has a good curveball. The control has just always been this major issue with him. And you've seen the stuff. I pulled back the 2024 spring breakout game. I know that that's old information, but he was 94 and 95 with 20 inches of induced vertical break and a 3,000 RPM curveball with more than 6.5 feet of extension. That's, if you limit him to 1-2 inning stints, can you get the control to a point where that stuff is really going to play? And we still don't know, but if that second half of the season was a slight indication, maybe. I think he's still going to remain interesting on my list looking ahead to next year. And I could even see, honestly, starting him back in AA. I'm sure he'd that's the last place he wants to go, because this will be like his third tour at the AA level. But I
Alex
would
Pham
say,
says, "Welcome to the club."
here's my house. It's well worn in, ready to move in for you. But I'd say starting back in AA next year, right back in the bullpen, and give him the first month. And if he can continue to build on what he did in the second half of the season, then you bump him up to AAA and you say maybe there's something here with Bright.
Yeah, it could be very reminiscent of what we saw from Carlos Tavera this season before he unfortunately got hurt and missed most of the year.
Yeah.
He was showing some promise early on. So, yeah, I would not be shocked at all if I think guys like Trace Bright and Ryan Long could even be slept on a little bit as relievers if they focused on that, because the stuff is good enough to play in short stints, even though they were trying to work them out as a starter, probably longer than we personally would have if we were in control. But now that the logjam is like at the AAA level, I think the hand's going to be forced a little bit.
I want to focus now on what I think were 4 really successful pitchers at AA this year: Nestor Herman, Trey Gibson, Braxton Bragg, and Levi Wells. And different stories with all those guys. Bragg was probably the biggest breakout in the farm system this year. Got off to a strong start at Aberdeen and then put up 42 2/3 innings of excellent work with the Baysox before having an elbow injury and having to undergo Tommy John surgery. Herman managed to put together a strong year: 91 innings pitched, 96 strikeouts, 3.76 ERA. Gibson, I mentioned at the top of the show, probably your leading candidate for pitcher of the year in the Orioles minor league system this year. He was flat out dominant with the Baysox. 1.55 ERA, 52 1/3 innings pitched with 68 strikeouts in that span. And then Wells, who came into this year was a little bit of buzz, but still some legitimate question marks based around his command, was excellent with Chesapeake. 75 innings, 80 strikeouts to 26 walks, a 3.12 ERA. And what was interesting in his season was that as the year went on, the strikeouts went up. So that was a good sign to me that he was able to do that. And he's holding his own right now in AAA. So looking at this group of 4 pitchers who were all very, very good this season, what stood out to you guys?
Wells, yeah, that's one name I forgot to rattle off when I tried to get them all. And shout out Baseball America, who listed him as one of the 9 most underrated pitching prospects in the minors. I think his adjusted stuff plus was 114. So it was like really good stuff. Obviously, we knew that despite what Keith Law tried to tell us one time. But yeah, Levi Wells, I think bare minimum, again, just a fiery guy out of the back of a bullpen. I think he could be between him, Chase McDermott, Zach Fruit. I mean, these are high octane guys that the Orioles have coming through the system, not to mention the Anthony Nunez, Tyson Neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, Levi Wells, very exciting. And I would not rule out him being a middle of the rotation starter eventually. Obviously, Trey Gibson, he's got an 8 I don't have it up, 8.75 ERA, I think, in AAA, but let me see what his FIP is because I know it's a lot lower than that. Yeah, 8.75 ERA, 3.49 xFIP, 4.60 FIP. So he's been continuing to pitch well. Just the results haven't been there at the AAA level, but the stuff is clearly there, and he dominated AA before he got promoted. I mean, absolutely dominated it. And Nestor Herman, I think, is underrated. I mean, he has always been as he's been here, despite having great results. And again, I think he's had, I can't pinpoint exactly, but I feel like every start, it's like, yeah, he gave up 2 runs, but honestly, his defense let him down, or there are extenuating circumstances that don't show up in the stat sheet. So I think he's what, like our 11th or 12th rated guy on our list. And I think he kind of is falling under the radar. Yeah, 3.93 ERA he ended up with all year long, 3.76 in AA, but 3.44 FIP and xFIP identical. So it seems like, yeah, I love all these guys. I think next year, I know the Orioles need to go out and get maybe 1, 2 like middle to upper rotation starters, but we are so loaded at the upper levels of the system with arms. It's kind of kind of crazy. I think even if we had the same amount of injuries on the pitching staff in 2026, we will be so much better equipped to handle that next season than we were this season.
Yeah, the Levi Wells stuff is the most interesting for me, just because it's like this. Jeff Ponce wrote that article at Baseball America, and he said with the potential for 4+ pitches, Wells might be one of the more underrated starters in the minors. He used the word starters there as a note. Like that's I think it's guys like Levi Wells. Honestly, I think it's guys like Levi Wells and Nestor Herman and maybe even Blake Money who kind of shine. They step out next year. They have their big, huge breakouts next year in AAA. And I think they're going to shine. There's all this attention rightfully being placed on Gibson and Ferred and Luis De Leon for many reasons. But I think you've got a couple of guys who are truly a little bit flying under the radar here, especially from like a national perspective, because maybe the stuff isn't super electric in Blake Money's instance, right? But he's a pitcher. He knows how to pitch, and he's got 5 pitches that he knows how to use, and he's got the major league quality velo. But he just continues to fly under the radar. Levi Wells is a guy who, like, outside of Baseball in America, who else is really pumping up Levi Wells? Like you said, Keith Laws just shitting on the guy. Like it's, I don't know. I'm excited to see what all these guys do across a full season of AAA. It's tough to watch guys like Herman and Trey Gibson right now, in particular in AAA, just because like they're reaching their career highs in innings at this point with the new baseball, with the new strike zone. There's a lot of factors going into that. So it's just, can you show me something? Can you flash a little bit here in AAA to close out the year? I'll be happy, and then we'll hit the reset button going into next year and see what they can do. But yeah, I mean, fantastic seasons for all those guys at the AA level. And Herman's the guy who, like, the stuff maybe isn't the sexiest, but it's a bunch of like 50-55 grade pitches with 50-55 grade control. And it's just he gets the job done most nights. And if he he has those nights where he does falter and he battles his control, but those are rare nights where he loses that control. Yeah, you look what he did at AA this year, 91 innings. Yeah, the strikeouts were down, but the walk numbers look good. ERA, FIP, XFIP, all there right in line around 3.5. Like just an overall solid year down there for Nestor Herman.
We would be remiss if before moving over the hitters, we didn't talk about the Baysox relievers, because for much of this year, this bullpen was a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, Keegan Gillis was in AA longer than he should have been, and that's a guy who was excellent for them earlier this season. But you could go beyond that and look at numbers that guys like Yaki Rivera put up over what was pretty close to a full season's worth of action. Tyson Neighbors, after he came over in the O'Hearn-Laureano trade with the Padres, was great with Chesapeake. So there were a lot of good bullpen arms. Carter Baumler is another one that pitched well in relief for the Baysox. So who stood out to you guys?
Honestly, everybody. Keegan Gillis, obviously, yeah, we talked about him to death early in the season, and he's actually turned it on pretty well here over the last several weeks for AAA. I think he's finally figured out the AAA ball and strike zone and all that. Yeah, Neighbors is electric. Carter Baumler looks fantastic. Yaki Rivera, yeah, it's easy to forget about him because they shut him down a little bit early for innings, but man, when he was on this year, he looks like he could be an elite relief prospect, and he's still very young. Daniel Lloyd pitched well. Carter Rustad came out of nowhere, had a really good season between high A and AA. Peter Van Loon, again, I mean, he's a little bit older. He hasn't had the success when he's been tried out at the next level, AAA, but he had another solid season. Anthony Nunez, before he was promoted, had fantastic AA stats, and he looks really good in AAA as well. Yeah, just looking at this list here, I think that's about it. But yeah, Dylan Hyde, he missed a lot of the year, unfortunately, but he was looking good when he was in there. It was just the pitching staff from top to bottom was lights out.
Yeah, I think it's just shout outs. Yeah, you mentioned Neighbors, 15 innings, 7 hits, 1 earned run, 5 walks, 19 strikeouts after the trade. I think he's going to get to spring training next year, get some run, and a lot of people are going to learn the name Tyson Neighbors for the first time because he's going to be an exciting arm to watch. Yeah, Carter Rustad had a really underrated year. We focused a lot more on, especially in the second half of the year, about these strictly relief arms popping and guys that they targeted at the deadline. They targeted some relief arms like Tyson Neighbors, but Rustad was a guy that we just didn't really talk about a lot this year. But in Double-A, 53 total innings between Delmarva, Aberdeen, and Chesapeake, with a 3.23 ERA, 24.5% strikeout rate. This is a guy who I don't have pitch data on him from Double-A or High A, obviously, but when he was at Missouri, he was low 90s, but 7 feet of extension with elite IVB numbers. Like he's an arm, he's an older arm, but if you're looking at him just in a relief role, statistically, he had a really solid year there at the Double-A level. And Micah Ashman was another guy who I haven't watched this year, so I can't really speak to what I saw from him on the mound, but after he came over in that trade from the Tigers at the deadline, 15 innings, he had a 4.80 ERA, but a 1.02 FIP, 38% strikeout rate, and just a 6% walk rate. And I went back and I pulled up his Fangraphs report, and they highlighted, he's 6'7" with an average fastball, 92, but 19 inches of induced vertical break. But both of his secondaries are playing up like plus pitches, according to Logenhagen, especially his slider, which produced elite whiff rates in 2025. The tailing action changeup is a passable third offering. And Logenhagen says if the Orioles want to try Micah Ashman out as a starter, that they would be justified because he has a lot of starter traits. He throws a ton of strikes. He has good control. Or he could just be a fast-moving relief arm to add to that stable. So Ashman's a guy who I need to find. Hopefully he pitched on the road in a good viewing ballpark and to get a good look at Micah Ashman after the trade. But yeah, kind of another kind of sneaky, maybe under the radar addition there at the deadline.
Let's go over now to the hitters. And you can look at the stats sheet and see that this was an offense that dealt with a lot of challenges. The Baysox ranked last in the Eastern League in batting average, slugging percentage, and OPS with figures of 212, 338, and 642, respectively. Their 304 on base percentage as a team was the second worst in the Eastern League, ahead of only New Hampshire, the Toronto affiliate. And when you look at this group, one thing that jumps out is that there were a lot of injuries. A lot of guys kind of had lost years because of the time that they missed and their struggles on the field when they were healthy. And it's worth noting that it wasn't all bad. Creed Willems, who we're going to be talking about a lot in a little bit here, had a nice season. Reed Trimble, when he was healthy, reminded us of what a fun player he can be when he is on the field. Aaron Estrada was promoted from Aberdeen later in the season and put up a very good run with the Baysox in 110 plate appearances and 855 OPS. Enrique Bradfield Jr. missed a lot of time with an injury, but was generally solid when healthy. So this was, I think, a tough year for a lot of position players at this level, and injuries were some of it, but then some guys really did struggle.
It was a rough lineup to start the year on paper before the injuries started popping up. So yeah, it got really rough there. I think there were some nights where you had an FCL guy or two in the starting lineup just because they needed a body. Like it was really, really bad. This is the worst Double-A has been on the hitting side since we've been doing this podcast for sure. But like you said, definitely some shining players there. Like Creed Willems had a really solid, consistent season. Trimble, I think he's at least put himself on the consideration to be protected on the Rule 5 draft. I still don't think he will be, but he's performing at least enough to be up there with Judd Fabian as a maybe, would they go one way or the other? Aaron Estrada, like you said, after promotion just was really, really good, even though he missed some time with an injury as well. Austin O'Verne, I feel like really came into his own. He had identical OPS 753 at High A and Double-A, but I just think he was more comfortable at using the skill set he had once he got to Double A, once he was in the middle of that season, he was stealing more at will, bunting for base hits, showing off the power, 5 doubles, 5 home runs. Wasn't walking as much, but I think he really put himself on the map once he got to Double A. Brandon Butterworth, who we obviously interviewed a week or two ago, he performed really well. He had a bad final week or so, but he was really, really good after being promoted to Double A as soon as he got here. Other than that, I mean, Adam Retzbach ended with a 703 OPS, but he was pretty good most of the year. 19 doubles, a triple, 13 home runs. So yeah, other than that, I mean, it was pretty rough, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, luckily by the end of the year, you did have some fun names that I think when you got, Aaron Estrada back in Double A potentially next year, Thomas Sosa, maybe Austin O'Vern back in Double A. We'll see. Like, it's going to be a lot better this year, but I think a lot of that had to do with what we talked about coming into the year with the whole, especially in the as far as the infield depth is concerned. Like, there just really wasn't much. There really wasn't any infield depth in the upper levels of the minor leagues. And so I think just unfortunately the Double A level took the brunt of that. You had Carter Young just has never performed. You had Anthony Servideo. I think he played a lot down there in Double A, a guy who just never really performed with the bat.
Max Wagner.
Yeah, Max Wagner never took another step forward. Tavian Josenberger had injuries. And when he was on the field, he really struggled. Like I mentioned in the AFL stuff, I thought he was a slam dunk pick to go to the AFL. He is not going. He was just a 3rd-round pick not too long ago. It's a little surprising there. But yeah, like Bradfield, good when he was on the field. Of course, O'Vern just played exactly as I thought he would when I wrote about him being a highly overlooked prospect in the system back in the winter. The strikeouts were going to be there. We knew that. But I was expecting a good amount of power from him, and he really started to show that. So the power started to shine through. You mentioned the speed, just electric out there on the base paths. 13 home runs with a 123 WRC plus across 2 levels this year. Really good first step for Austin O'Vern, and he's another year of focusing on baseball full time after stepping away from football. And he made a lot of changes after his freshman year at USC, and made sure he made some more changes here since joining the Orioles. So I think he's a prime breakout candidate next year. Estrada, we talked a lot about, is just a guy who is just completely slept on. And he's not going to challenge Westberger or Holiday or anybody on that infield at the major league level if he stays in the organization. But he could be he's a switch hitter, utility player with power. He can play the infield. He can play the outfield. He has a 137 WRC plus at Double A this year. He hit 300. I think his last game of the year, he went 3 for 3 with a walk or something. Just a statement on the last day of the year there. And he's only 20 years old still. It's I could even see, the Orioles are going to sign a lot of, they're going to sign next year's VMAL machines. They're going to sign those guys to the extension of the bench that are going to go down there in Norfolk. And you need those guys. But could Aaron Estrada push his way into AAA opening day roster next year? Potentially. If he doesn't, he's not going to be in Double A for very long next year, I don't think, because he continued everything we said we wanted to see from Aaron Estrada when he was in High A to get that promotion to Double A. He continued that and improved even more when he got to Double A this year. So continues to be criminally overlooked. And yeah, that as far as the bats go, that's about it as far as the bats are concerned at the Double A level this year, unfortunately. But it will be much better next year.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. And the one thing about Aaron Estrada, he turns 21 January 16th. I believe we share a birthday. Great birthday, great day of the year. This is a very 20 to 21 to 22. This is prime development age. So I really feel like he could even hit another gear next year. And especially if he figures out another trick of the trade, if he takes another big leap forward developmentally over the offseason, I could certainly see him starting in AAA and really making a statement at his age 21 season.
Yeah, what's interesting about Estrada is that this was the second year in a row that he didn't hit his first home run of the season until late May. That happened in 24, which he split between Delmarva and Aberdeen. he ended up finishing with 9 homers. This year doesn't hit his first home run of the season again until late May, but he ends up with 10 homers between 2 levels, and even 5 at Aberdeen and another 5 at Chesapeake. So the power is there. It might, in the course of a season, take a little while to show up. I don't know if that's going to be a trend in the future with him or not, or if it's just coincidental, but the power is there. He can move around the field. I think the biggest question mark with him going into the future is going to be, what's the position that you feel comfortable the most rolling him out in? They tried a little bit of left field this year, and that didn't seem to work particularly well, but I doubt they're going to give up on it. So maybe it's second base, maybe it's third, but I think that your utility players, you have to have that one spot where if all else fails, you're fine putting them there for the night. And I think the Orioles still have to find that with Estrada, but the bat is so good that you've just got to hope that he continues to develop at this pace.
Yeah. And another just disappointing, he played 112 games for a second straight year, which is good to see. But Douglas Hodo was a guy, I think he went to the Arizona Fall League last year as well. He was a guy who his first 2 years in the organization didn't play. He only had like 50, 60 something games those first 2 years. And he was, he comes out of Texas known as this, a really good center field defender out there when he was down there for the Longhorns. But last year when he was finally healthy, he hit 9 home runs. He hit 20 doubles. He had a solid year. He stole 51 bases and he walked 70 times. So he had a 382 on base percentage. And I feel like the conversation we were having about Hodo was like, okay, is he playing his way into like a fourth outfield conversation? And this year, same thing, 112 games, same as last year, but just a 201 average. Strikeouts went up, walks went down. Didn't even see, was only 29 stolen bases, caught 10 times this year, just a 650 OPS. So even the guys who did stay healthy, outside of Creed, who we're going to touch on here, saving the best for last, outside of Creed, no one else who stayed at AA level for an extended period of time really was able to take that next step forward this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a tough year for Hodo. I think I had said before the season, because we were getting a lot of questions about Hodo, that if you wanted to look at a ceiling for him, it could be Ryan McKenna with a better, going to walk more and hit for more power. But that was kind of the baseline that I had. The difference between the two is that McKenna had a much better track record of hitting upper levels minor league pitching than Hodo has had to this point in his career. And I was really hoping that last year was going to be the springboard to say, okay, maybe he's not an everyday player, but that's not what you thought you were getting when you drafted him out of Texas. And if you could have him just emerge as a really solid 4th or 5th outfielder who can give you a lot of time in center field, that's great for a 6th-round draft pick. But we didn't get that this season.
No, I still think there are some tools there where he could be like AAA super depth, like 5th outfielder in AAA, 4th outfielder in AAA, where if you need someone that you feel comfortable DFAing after a game or two in an emergency, not terrible to have. I still think the skill set isn't much different than he showed last year, but yeah, if he's going to be striking out like 30% of the time in AA, it's not going to get any better. Higher, he did have a little bit of a lower BABIP than he usually runs, so even if you bump up his batting average by 20, 30 points, still below average. But I don't know. He's no more disappointing than Hudson Haskin. No offense to that drive-by.
We'll go in now to our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre or post game drink. And when you're at the ballpark this year, be sure to check out the beer stand behind home plate, where you can get one of Checker Spot's signature beers, the Bird is a Word. And it's also worth noting that this Sunday is the 3rd annual South Baltimore Brewery District hot dog race. Checker Spot, as Relish, is going to be going for a 3-peat when that event begins on Sunday morning at 11. So the perfect stop before the Orioles take on the Yankees at Camden Yards. Checker Spot will be going up against their neighbors in the South Baltimore Brewery District. Wyco as Ketchup and Pickett as mustard. The event begins at 11 outside of Pickett Brewing Company, which is right near Checker Spot. You can actually see the big mural outside of Checker Spot from the front door at Pickett. So be sure to head over to Pigtown this weekend and check out that event. Now, we'll get into our awards here. We've been doing this with every team recap, awarding our hitter and pitcher of the year. We have our hitter of the year solidified. However, Nick has a blank ballot on our outline, and I don't know if that's an act of protest or if he just forgot to jot down his selections. So, Nick, who are your hitter and pitcher of the year for the Chesapeake Baysox?
Hey, he's breaking a tie here on the pitching side. This is good radio.
I'm going to break the tie in favor of Trey Gibson. Just statistically speaking, like I jotted down his just AA stuff here. So there were 101 pitchers who threw at least 50 innings in the Eastern League this season. And Gibson had the 4th highest strikeout rate at 32.5%. And among that group, he had the 3rd lowest walk rate among the top 10 in strikeout percentage, behind Cam Schlittler was one of those arms, and another Yankee arm, Elmer Rodriguez Cruz. Good for him. But 2nd highest K to walk percentage at 23.9%, behind only Jonah Tong, who's in the major leagues. Jonah Tong had almost a 30% strikeout to walk percentage there. Gibson's 155 average against, 2nd lowest in the Eastern League, 2nd best ERA, 3rd best whip, 3rd lowest home run per 9 innings, which is good considering he's pitching his home games in Bowie. Yeah, just a fantastic season there for Trey Gibson. Put up some great numbers there. And the hitter, like, yeah, we can talk more about Creed Willems because we've been hinting at it. I haven't really touched him, but Creed Willems as the hitter of the year, just a very solid year. And from my point of view, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but from my point of view, his season went under the radar just because I was paying more attention to Ethan Anderson. Like, break out of this slump. Please break out of this slump. Please get healthy. We want to see Ethan Anderson from the first 2 weeks of the year. I'm waiting to see that again. Andrew Tess having his big breakout, initial breakout at least. Of course, the Basayo excitement. Then they draft Caden Bodine. So all the while, Creed's just kind of doing his job. I would check in and be like, all right, have the strikeouts regressed? No, they haven't. Is he still showing the power? Like, check. You look up and, oh, it's a double dong day for Creed Willems down there in AA. Great, check. He's doing his thing. I just really didn't find myself paying a lot of attention to Creed this year. And when you look back at his full season, it was a 117 WRC plus. The strikeout rate continued to drop even more. 27% in 2023, 20.5% last year, down to 19% strikeout rate this year, all at the AA level. Career high contact rate, like just a very good season down there at the AA level for Creed this year.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. He definitely had his ebbs and flows, but I think by far his most consistent season, he was right around 250, 260 average, hovering around 800 OPS most of the season. And yeah, that's good enough because you got to consider the run environment. A 117 WRC plus, that's almost 20% better than league average in his age 22 season. So that's pretty darn good for a catching prospect. And maybe the defense isn't quite there, but I think it should be at least be able to be developed into, again, a third catcher, potentially DH, first base, maybe backup catcher, offensively minded. Maybe if the full ABS goes into play at some point, that wouldn't be as big of an issue. But at the very least, I know he's Rule 5 eligible this season. I don't think he's going to get protected by the Orioles, but maybe he could be a really good target for another team in a trade this season. Could be win-win. He gets a chance to go somewhere where there's at least a chance to be a catcher or a major leaguer on some team sooner rather than later. And the Orioles can hopefully get something from him because he is a nice little prospect.
I just went back and I looked at our most recent public list, which was published in August, our top 50 update. Depending on how you count Ike Iris, Creed Willems is either the 3rd or 4th best catching prospect on our list, and he was down at number 33. But I made this point on the air a few weeks ago, and I think that it's something to really think about with Willems, which is how many organizations in baseball would be happy is their top catching prospect, which is 22-year-old at Double-A, who was putting up good numbers at the plate, improving defensively in all facets of the game calling, blocking pitches, what have you. Williams continues to develop and get better in those areas. And you look at his final numbers, 253 average, 117 WRC plus. You guys already touched on the strikeout to walk numbers, which were fantastic. 16 home runs this season, just one off his career high. He had a really, really good year. I think this is his best season across the board at the plate. So he'll be 22 on opening day next year. His birthday isn't until June. So he'll be 22 on opening day next year, probably in AAA. Probably not getting a lot of buzz outside of the Orioles system unless he's traded by then. But if he is packaged in a move this offseason, some organization will have a 22-year-old catcher at AAA coming off his best season, and they could probably claim that as their best catching prospect and be completely justified in it. And it just makes you realize, one, how stacked this organization is behind the plate right now, especially with Basayo and Caden Bodine, but that Williams just is a good prospect who's getting better. It's been a very gradual build-up to get to this point. He certainly hasn't been fast-tracked, but when you consider that he was a catcher drafted out of high school, we knew all along the development curve was going to be a little bit slower, and he's just checking off box after box right now.
Yeah, he's gradually, like you said, he's just continued to develop at a pretty steady pace throughout his young career. And I think I would be honestly surprised if he didn't make the majors at some point with some team. I mean, I think he's, with his age and his abilities, maybe he's not going to be able to be an everyday catcher, because at this point, I don't think the glove is there, but the bat is at least playable enough to make it with some team. It's really hard to find room here with the Orioles, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, that's the tricky part there with Creed, though, is like, where does he fit in? Because when you've got Maverick Hanley, who's still like, I was thinking Maverick Hanley was going to be like a free agent after this year. He is not. So like, if you keep Maverick Hanley around, like, I was thinking Creed and Silas could form a nice 1-2 duo, and you think, all right, if we need an emergency catcher, do we want the more defensive minded guy in Silas, or do we want the bat in Creed? Do we just need a week of offense, and hopefully that power shines through there? You got a good 1-2 punch there. But then, like, if Maverick Hanley's still going to be in the organization and they keep him on the 40-man roster, I think that adds clearly that adds more competition for Creed. You know, they're going to bring in the depth catcher to stash away in AAA, even if it's David Banuelos being the taxi squad guy again, or someone like him again next year, the new David Banuelos to be the taxi squad guy. But yeah, it is going to be tough for Creed to crack the major league side. So it is a positive that he had this very good year at the AA level, because yeah, I could very easily see him packaged in some sort of deal. He's not going to headline a big time trade, but he can help boost a nice trade package.
Before we wrap up, I do want to touch on the pitcher of the year race. Trey Gibson wins that one here for AA Chesapeake. Probably not going to be the last time we're talking about Gibson in a situation where we're giving out an award this year, but Bob had Braxton Bragg. I had Gibson on my ballot. Nick broke the tie by going with Gibson. And it's worth just running a quick comparison, because despite Bragg's injury, there was actually not a significant gap in AA innings. Gibson had 52 1/3 with the Baysox. Bragg was 42 2/3. Bragg had a 2.32 ERA in that time period. Gibson 1.55. Strikeout numbers, Gibson had 68 strikeouts. Bragg struck out 59. Bragg did beat Gibson when it came to walks. Gibson walking 18 batters during his time with Chesapeake compared to Bragg's mere 12. That shows you how good Bragg's command is. So, Bob, I just want you to have the chance here before we wrap up. Nick ran off some of the numbers with Gibson, which were fantastic. But give us a little bit more background on why you went with Braxton Bragg as your pitcher of the year for AA.
Honestly, because I knew Trey Gibson was going to win, and I wanted to be able to shout him out so he wasn't forgotten, because it's easy to forget just how good he was before he went down with Tommy John. I mean, honestly, potentially better than Gibson was at AA, and I think he was on the precipice of a AAA promotion before the injury. He struck out 33.7% of batters in his time at AA and only walked 6.9% so that's a 26.9 strikeout to walk percentage. Whereas again, Gibson 32.5 strikeout rate, 8.6% walk rate, still great numbers, 23.9 K to walk percentage. Gibson had him beat in FIP 2.20 to 2.42, but I just think it was so close. I still think Gibson's just the better prospect, even if Bragg didn't miss any time this year. But I think it was so close that it was worth giving Braxton Bragg a shout out, and hopefully we see him by the end of 2026 get ready for the 2027 season.
And with that does it for this week. So we're going to be back next week on a different night and time. We're planning to be on Wednesday of next week. And in fact, as we get into the off season, we're going to be recording on Wednesday nights more often than not. So just keep that in mind as you plan your off season viewing. We're of course going to be here every week, 2 shows a week, well into the off season, into spring training. We'll be back next week. And in the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. We are also over at Substack, OrielsOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community. You can join at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. And we'll have more content for our patrons over the off season. So just because the season is winding down doesn't mean that we are slowing down over here. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.